Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, I'm Supervisor Paula Mahan, and welcome to Colonie Connect. Today I have a special guest, Chief Steve Heider, our Chief of Police in the town of Colonie. Welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you, Paula.
It's great to have you here. Our topic of discussion today is identity theft. We're hearing a lot about this. The topic comes up more frequently, and it's an issue that really faces millions of American victims annually. And so it's something that we in the town of Colonie are trying to take more preventative measures. And as Chief of Police, I'm sure you hear more about this topic than I do. How would you define identity theft?
You know, quite simply, it is when someone takes a portion or all of your identity, meaning your name, your address, your social security number, your date of birth, driver's license number, basically for the purposes of some kind of fraud. It can be as simple as taking your credit card and posing as you, or it can be as complex as taking your identity and actually taking a credit in your name, buying a house in your name, and things like that. Okay,
so we hear about a lot of the typical types of fraud, like credit card fraud, or as you say, someone taking your name and purchasing something. There are a lot of other things that you see, even on TV, we see commercials of people going through trash cans, things like that. So do you hear a lot about that level of identity theft where people are invading other people's trash cans or their offices or their homes, whatever?
Sometimes we never know exactly how an identity is stolen. Other times we can track it, but we've had cases where people all of a sudden start getting alerts on their credit, and it's based on a credit card that they disposed of 3, 4, 5 years ago. So there are times that we can't track it. Other times we can. We've had some really horrific cases where actually people not only stole the people's identity, but actually sold a house right out from underneath them. It was a senior citizen case. That attracted a lot of attention because the people were able to dupe so many people along the line. But you mentioned the trash pickup. You know, people have to realize that when they put their trash out on the corner, constitutionally, that trash now belongs to anybody who wants to take it. And we've always stressed a $99 shredder from your local office supply store can go a long way to make sure that you don't wind up with $10,000 worth of bills that you didn't want.
So that shredder is a very wise investment, and when we think of how many papers come to our home, materials from everywhere with our names, addresses, things like that on them. It is very easy for someone to just grab hold of that and run with it.
And we tell people, it's a lot of people know now to destroy their personal information on type of credit bills or credit card bills. But, it's even magazine covers, not that we want to create a paranoia, but your name and address appear on every single piece of mail that comes to your house. And we actually are recommending people now to just tear off that name part. Throw that away separately from the magazine, because you really don't know where that magazine eventually is going to wind up. You may put it in a recycling bin, but there's going to be somebody that's going to be going through those recyclables to sort them at some point. And we especially tell people that, again, that shredder should shred anything with your name that you would put in the garbage. Make sure it goes through the shredder first.
So a lot of times I know people to be useful with their materials, they may read their magazines and then they donate them to some place just because they think they're doing something good. And if they're going to do that, if they're going to make that donation and recycle those magazines, then maybe, as you say, the best thing to do would be just to cut their name off or tear their name off, and then it's safe to donate them.
Yeah, I even brought that up to a doctor that I know. I was in his office one day for a routine exam, and the magazines were all spread out along the table. And what he had been doing is taking magazines from his house and bringing it to his office for people to read. So here's a doctor's, and they normally want to protect their privacy to a certain extent so patients don't show up at their door on a Sunday morning at their home. Every magazine had the doctor's, his name, his wife's name, full address, And all that can lead to problems. So at that point, I told them, listen, remove the cover if you have to.
Right. It's hard that we have to, think about things in that way, that a simple thing like putting a magazine out with your name on it, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Now, I know there are other regulations, federal regulations, state regulations that help to prevent identity theft, and we as a town board adopted an identity theft prevention program. We're trying to take steps to alleviate the town, from being a venue for theft and fraud. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what we're doing in the town of Colonie.
Well, we'd like to think that from the police department standpoint, we take a very big look at the education programs. And not only going out and speaking to civic groups, speaking to professional groups, but actually looking at our own policies. And just as you referenced, there are certain departments in the town that really do maintain a lot of personal information that could almost be considered public information. So it's important to us, and I'll give you one example within the police department. For years we've been filling out a certain form, and I'll keep that form secret for now. We've been filling out a certain form, and on that form was a state regulation that we take a person's name, address, and date of birth. What we didn't know is, or what we never realized until about 6 months ago, is that form was going out of our front window anytime somebody asked for a copy of it. So it was actually brought up to us by a banker who had just been through an ID theft course, and she just couldn't understand why the officer needed her date of birth for this form. So we made the internal changes to where, at least on our internal forms, we will never have that happening again in terms of going out. And I think, when you look at what the town board did recently with adopting rules, it's imperative that we as a town embark on what we have been doing and always keep it very at the tip of our fingers, so to speak, in terms of keeping this in mind. It's technically safer to live in a town today than it was in 1973. Our burglary rates are down, robbery rates are down, but when you look at the white-collar crimes, the identity thefts, the different things with credit problems, that is the new crime of the 2000s.
Well, we live in an age of technology that's changing on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And it is a way, for people to take advantage of it in many different ways and manipulate technology to work to their advantage. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in today. Certainly, there are many more good people than bad people, but we want to be as safe as we can as a town, as a police department, to be as preventative as we can. Now, I know there are other types of programs as well, federal programs, state programs. Are you familiar with some of those programs?
Almost every agency now throughout state government and federal government is dwelling on the protection of people's personal information. I know the State Attorney General's office does a tremendous amount of outreach work in terms of trying to get people on track to protect themselves. The Federal Trade Commission is also very involved. As a matter of fact, it's always recommended that if you were ever a victim of identity theft, that you would also report that to the Federal Trade Commission, because they do the national statistics. Because when you look across the country, it's in the area between 4 and 9 million people a year are victims. And it's about a $60 billion a year business. And our town is like any other town. We probably now average a couple a week, sometimes 10, 15 a month. We're probably averaging of strictly identity theft cases between 300 and 500 a year. That's just for our town. So you can imagine when you look across the country, and we're a large town, but there's a lot of large towns across this country. And when you bring up the technology, it brings up an important point. Even with the town having one of the best computer systems, it's got all kinds of firewalls, all kinds of safety. Even I still get spam in my office, the chief of police's office, okay, with very official-looking things from the IRS, from banks, from credit unions that I have no idea who they are. Yet they're asking me for my personal identification information to check their security sources.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's one of the major ways that people are gaining access to people through technology. And people have to be very, very observant to that, because we know if it's coming through our computers at work, it's coming through your computers at home.
Exactly. And the thing is that, as you say, a lot of these forms look very official. and they're very convincing. Especially, they target the elderly population, and sometimes, college-age students, populations that are very vulnerable, and they look very appealing. They offer all kinds of rewards for doing this or that, and all you have to do is fill out your name, address, and your birthday and things like that. So it is very, very important when someone receives something that they've never seen before, or they're asking for personal information, to give us a call so we can check it out and check it out with someone so that they don't get taken advantage of.
And what we try to tell people is your bank, your financial institution, the IRS, the New York State Tax Department will never solicit your information over the computer or over the phone. They'll never call you and ask you to give them anything. So people need to be instantly suspicious if they get a phone solicitation or a computer solicitation, no matter how good it looks. As you said, some of the banks have fallen victim to it, to where the logos are perfectly correct.
Yes.
And typically what they're doing is they're asking people for people's assistance. The typical message is that we're doing a security check, we need your help.
Right.
Please give us this information to verify your account. That should be an instant suggestion to people to click that thing right off, because that'll never happen. However, having said that, people have to realize, though, that if they call their own credit company or if they call their own bank, the bank is going to ask them for verification.
Right.
We had a funny story one time. We tell everybody to apply to get their free credit reports every year. And there's a website, annualcreditreport.com, that you can go and get up to 3 credit reports, one from each of the 3 major associations a year. So a person had just been through one of my programs where I said, never give your information out of the phone, never give your information out of the computer. Well, they had to realize, though, that when they applied to get their free credit report, the credit reporting people were going to ask them information. They wouldn't give it to them.
Right.
They called me on the phone and said, I won't give them the information. I said, well, they're not going to give you your free credit report. Key thing is, if you initiate the contact, then you should be willing to give up the information as long as you trust the organization you're going with.
And I think that's an important point, because I think it's very important to know who it is that you're calling, or who you are engaging in a conversation with regarding your personal information. And so you have to do your homework, and you have to be sure that you're working with someone that you can trust.
Absolutely.
And so that's one thing that it's important to do, and that is to know who it is that you're talking to. The other thing we call red flags that we look for, various types of red flags, which means, that's a sign that there could be something wrong. We have fee-based activities that go on in our town. For example, our EMS department, if they get an emergency call and the ambulance arrives at your home, that's a fee-based service. So there's information exchanged. People pay their water bills. They might pay their water bills through check or online or whatever. There are different types of things where we are very protective of the services that we offer and how we protect that information. But there are red flags to look for if there are changes in your account, changes in the activity, changes in charges. We look at the identity. Is the photo ID, does it match the person? Are they giving an address that was given before by someone else? Things like that. So there are a lot of red flags to look for, and we want to be as cautious as we can on our end. And we don't want to live in a world where we're paranoid about giving out information, but it's just common sense, everyday common sense ways of looking at how to protect yourself. And
when you look at the average homeowner, the average person that lives in a town or travels throughout the town, it does all come down to common sense. The one tip that we give people is, if you don't get your bills in the mail, don't take that as a positive. Because if you know you owe a credit card company and all of a sudden they stop sending you a bill, there's a very clear reason why that happens. One reason may be the fact that someone may have compromised your billing address on the card. and that now they're getting the bills at a different address. You're sitting home pretty happy that you haven't gotten a bill, not realizing somebody is already using your account.
Right.
When we look at some of the things, if they do computerized checking or computerized banking, they have instant access to their statement every day. They can check their statement. If something isn't showing up, if there's some check that's been missing, we tell people to call the vendor. We've had many cases where no matter how careful we are as employers, you could always have an employee who was starting to steal that same information.
Right.
One of our biggest cases of identity theft where we knew that names were being exchanged was in the case of a healthcare organization. And they have all your personal information. Right. And little did they know, one of their clerks was selling for $50 a name the entire file from the health reports. Meaning names, social security, date of birth, mother's maiden name, you name it, she was selling it. Ultimately arrested and went to prison, but in the meantime, probably about 2,500 people's identity was compromised before it was located.
Wow, that's a shame. Well, as you say, you try to do the best that you can. We do, as a government, we try to do the very best that we can. And any of the programs, procedures that we put in place, it's important to continually monitor them and review any new procedures that might come up, any new safeguards that might come up, so that we can be as effective as possible. And we do that. We try to make sure that we cover as much territory as we can, so that thieves, can't gain the data they need to, do something wrong that's going to hurt us. But we continue to research new types of techniques to prevent identity theft and data loss. Trying to think of a few other examples that might help our viewers. Maybe one of the things that I get concerned about, and I don't do it myself only because I'm just concerned about it, and that is making purchases online. Are there ways that people can make purchases online that are safer than others?
I think what you need to know the websites you're dealing with. We're very careful in advising people that if you don't know who you're dealing with, don't deal with them. That we have people deal all the time with eBay, with the different type of vendors online. They have security safeguards in effect. So if you pay very close attention to it, and they have pop-ups that'll tell you not to do certain things.
Okay.
We've had many situations now where people being asked to mail, instead of checks or credit cards, either MoneyGrams or Western Union. Those two are very legitimate companies. They have a specific purpose in our society, but they're being used by criminals because they don't have internal tracking of once you deposit money. So that we're almost saying to people, and I know that eBay tells people, if you're asked to send it to one of our clients by Western Union or MoneyGram, don't send it. So that's one of the things. When you look at some of the purchases online, it's almost safer now to make some purchases online than you are in going to a store. Because as long as their site is secure, and you can see the little lock symbol and all the little symbols on your icon bar, your information is probably safer through that, unless the vendor has a problem within their own system.
Okay.
Recently, one of our local grocery stores, the identity of about 30,000 customers was compromised just by something that happened within their system, and the information leaked out. They realized that they notified everybody. Everybody got new credit cards, so hopefully nobody suffered. But one of the main things you can do is to do those credit checks, to apply for those credit reports, because when you're dealing with a lot of online work, and a lot of people do a lot of times, you just never know when something gets captured.
Right.
And one thing we've learned with our computer security classes that we give, it's very easy to have your information, especially in these days of Wi-Fi, where your computer's on all the time. Somebody could drive down the street, pull up in front of your house, log on to your computer while you're not at home. So there's a lot of safety things that people have to keep in mind. And it's just a true success story when people can, one, not become a victim, or if they become one, they find out soon, they take care of the problem and they address it.
Yes, and I think that's key. If you feel like something's wrong, or someone may have retrieved some of your information, don't wait. Get help immediately. And when we talk about computers, and you talked about the Attorney General's office, maybe just a few months ago, I attended a seminar at, I believe it was Leishakill Middle School. It was a PTA event, and the Attorney General's office representatives were there and talking to parents about different types of crimes that can occur with their children over the computers.
Right.
Which, again, that's another area where technology is not used properly. You know, technology is a great thing, and we can do wonderful things with all the new technology. But with that comes responsibility. So the Attorney General's office is a great resource for parents if they have any questions about sites that their children are using. So I think it's good to add that to our show today as well. But you know, the whole emphasis needs to be on prevention and common sense. And if you do feel as though there's some type of problem, you know, seek some help and get some answers, and don't wait.
Yeah, you definitely need to report it, because we as an agency or as a town can't respond if we don't know if there's something that's happened.
Right.
You know, we now have developed a unit that handles a lot of white-collar crime. And we will try to track the criminal down, but if nothing else, we'll try to get the people on the right path to where they can make themselves whole again. Because many times in identity theft, it's not the money you lose, it's the credit you lose. It's the time you're going to lose trying to straighten your credit out.
And a lot of anxiety.
And a lot of anxiety, not knowing what's out there in your name. And it's very important it won't go away. If you think you have a problem, that's the time to make a report and to start taking those steps. And one of the other key areas that we see an awful lot, and unfortunately we can identify many cases that emanated from this, is where people have either contractors, health aides, cleaning people. These are all great professions, but you know, you never know who's going to be in your house sometimes.
Right.
And then if nothing else, keep your personal papers up under lock and key.
Yes.
There's no reason for your Social Security card or your driver's license or all your credit cards to be laying out in the open, where if somebody was having a bad day, they wanted to pick them up. Because a lot of our cases, both in business embezzlement cases as well as personal individual embezzlement cases or identity theft cases, start with somebody having access to the information. So keep that under lock and key. Don't keep it out in the open where the person that's going to be in your house for 5 minutes can walk away with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of information.
So two important things to have in our home. Number one's a shredder.
Yes.
And number two, either a file cabinet or safe that locks.
Yeah, because many times it's a crime of opportunity. You know, the person may not have had a criminal intent when they walk through your house, but you know, if they look in that counter, then there's a credit card, there's a checkbook, there's a driver's license. It's unbelievable how sometimes people have a weak moment, take it,
Yes.
and once they do it once, they have a tendency to repeat and repeat and repeat.
Well, you know, it makes me think about our police officers, how different the training has to be to be prepared for some of the newer crimes, you know, such as identity theft and those types of frauds. So our police officers, as they're trained, also have to be trained well to identify these types of issues and really understand technology, what computers can do, what some of these, you know, machines can do, because they're the people that are going to be protecting us. So it brings a whole new type of a role for our police officers as well.
And we've been very lucky because with your support, the town board's support, we have a unit now that deals strictly with computer crime. We have a unit that deals with the type of things that can happen with children with computers, white-collar crime. You know, I'm the most fortunate police chief in the world. I have some of the most qualified people underneath me. The hiring practices that we employ, we bring in the best. I have CPAs that work for me. I've had lawyers that work for me in the past as police officers. And they bring those special skills. And likewise, we try to do our best and keep them trained and the most up to date. Because the one problem we're having in law enforcement across the country in regards to technology, the laws don't change fast enough to keep up with the crimes. And for many years, you know, we had a situation where credit card fraud could only be committed if you caught the person with the credit card in their hand.
Handed, yeah.
So now, when all credit card fraud, a lot of it is done over the computer, there wasn't a crime attached to the book to apply to that. So it takes time to have these things done, but when you bring up about training, it is a different job for a police officer today
Yeah.
when it comes to some of this high-tech stuff.
Yeah, and I'm confident, and I know you are too. I mean, we have an outstanding police department, and we have people with very diversified abilities, which is something you need today. And truly, public safety is a priority for us, and you do an outstanding job for us, and all of our staff in the police department. I can't say enough good things about them. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time and effort, and it has to be a priority because you do need to dedicate resources to public safety, but it is a priority for us in the town. And this is just one aspect of,
Right.
of what you do on a daily basis. So I think it's important for people to hear about this topic, and the more educated you are, the better able you are to prevent these types of crimes from happening.
No question about it.
So I thank you very much for being here today and giving us a little bit of your knowledge regarding identity theft. And we're going to continue to do what we can do as a town and work collaboratively with our police department to keep Colonie a very safe place to live.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate you being here
you.
today. And thank you for joining us on Colonie Connect.